Coming up on Mountain News this morning, we have estimates for next week's gubernatorial election voter turnout. And we lay out the plans for Vice President Mike Pence's visit to Southern Kentucky with Governor Matt Bevin later today. Plus, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Lexington t-shirt printing company that refused to print t-shirts for the city's Pride Festival.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning. The time is 5:30 on November 1st. I'm Madison Program, and thank you for joining us on Mountain News this morning. So some trick-or-treaters went out yesterday, some are today, some are tomorrow, but this morning it is cold. So let's go to Brandon Robinson. It's chilly. You got to bring out the jackets this morning, Brandon.
Listen, I tell you, it is a big difference from this time yesterday morning. I'll show you those numbers here in a second. But welcome to November. We're starting off on a cold note, as Madison mentioned, but not too much going on this morning. Some cloud cover saved us from the 20s, at least so far, but the rain and snow is gone. Temperatures right now right around freezing in most of the area. The warmest spot in our region is here in Hazard at 35, 36 in Huntington, 25 to 35 degrees colder than it was this time yesterday morning. Yes, those numbers are accurate. So a big cool down with that cold front. Sunny skies today. After we see that, though, temperatures only get into the upper 40s. We'll talk about that and some warmer weather coming up here in just a little bit. Madison.
Thank you, Brandon. Well, Election Day is less than 1 week away. About 1 in 3 registered voters turned out for the 2015 gubernatorial election. Hillary Thornton has more on what officials expect turnout to look like this time around.
Back in 2015, for the state's last governor's election, there was about 30% voter turnout. The Secretary of State is predicting a similar turnout for Tuesday. Secretary of State Allison Lundergan Grimes is predicting a 31% voter turnout statewide. That projection is based on absentee voting so far. This year's candidates, the Republican incumbent Matt Bevin and Democrat Attorney General Andy Beshear, in the midst of making their final pushes with the rest of their party's ticket. Today, Governor Bevin had a couple of events with Dr. Ben Carson, while Attorney General Beshear continued on his bus tour.
Are we ready?
This is about values. It's about voting your values and not your party. And what is in the best interest of yourself? What would you fight for?
I see people hungry for a governor that works for all Kentuckians and not just his rich buddies.
Now, the clerk here in Fayette County says voter turnout is difficult to predict and that there are many factors this year that could shift that up or down. He says the potential factors he sees are if youth voters will actually turn out, if Kentucky's education community's anger with the current governor will translate at the polls, and that many voters seem to be worn out with the bitterness seen in politics at all levels. Don Blevins says the weather also can have an impact. He says typically with rain, they do see a lower turnout. And that predicted 31% would amount to about 1 million Kentuckians casting their vote on Tuesday. For now, in Lexington, Hillary Thornton, WKYT.
Now, polls will open around 6 a.m. and close around 6 p.m. To find out where your local polling place is, you can check the State Board of Elections website at elect.ky.gov. And Vice President Mike Pence will be in Southern Kentucky with Governor Matt Bevin later today. The two will travel the I-75 corridor in the afternoon, making stops in Corbin, Williamsburg, and London. The owner of the restaurant they will stop at in Corbin says it's an honor to host the sitting vice president and is looking forward to the visit.
You know, it's supposed to be fun. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to have fun with this and be honored that they chose this city of Corbin to come to.
The day will end with a stop in London for a fish fry and get out to vote event. And expect delays along I-75 this afternoon. Officials say if the interstate is shut down, it will only be in one direction and should only last 5 to 10 minutes. Also expect a high number of law enforcement officials between Williamsburg and London. And we will have coverage of Vice President Mike Pence's visit to Southern Kentucky throughout the day. You can see the VP's plane land at the London Corbin Airport around noon on WYMT.com and our Facebook page. We'll have reporters with him during his stops in Corbin and Williamsburg, and we will carry the Vice President's remarks later at the Laurel London Optimist Club live on WYMT, and that should happen sometime after 3:15. And of course, we'll also have coverage during all of our newscasts this evening. This also comes just days before President Trump holds a rally at Rupp Arena in Lexington. That will be Monday night at 7. And yesterday, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of Hands On Originals, a Lexington t-shirt printing company that refused to print t-shirts for the city's Pride Festival. Nick Oliver has more on the ruling in a case that is now several years old.
The Supreme Court of Kentucky settling a case more than 7 years old, ruling in favor of Blaine Adamson and his decision to not make t-shirts for Lexington's 2012 Pride Festival. Adamson citing religious beliefs after arguments in August.
That I had to stand. It's at the end of the day, I'm accountable to God for what I print on my press.
In the opinion by Justice Lawrence Van Meter, he outlined their decision, citing no individual claimed Hands On Original had discriminated against them. Instead, it was the then Gay and Lesbian Service Organization who filed the lawsuit. Also pointing to Adamson making shirts for other groups, one being a singer who actually sang in the Pride Festival. The final reason being at no time did Adamson have knowledge of the sexual orientation or gender identity of the person representing the organization.
It's not fair, and it sends, a message to our community that isn't great.
Carmen Wampler Collins is the executive director of the now Pride Community Services Organization. She was part of the group that pushed for action against the small business.
And it's really not about t-shirts or cakes. It's really about what else could we be prohibited from?
Adamson's legal representation says this was never about prohibiting anyone from anything, instead saying it all comes down to the First Amendment.
Hands On Original's position is simple. They work with everyone. What they can't do is print messages that conflict with their owners' religious beliefs.
In Lexington, Nick Oliver for the Fox 56 10 o'clock news.
In 2012, the owner of Hands On Originals refused to print the shirt, citing his religious beliefs. In the ruling, justices found that no individual had claimed Hands On discriminated against them. And in Clay County, a woman is accused of calling 911 with a false report that she was shot. Deputies arrested Donna Keene. They say dispatchers received a call Wednesday night from Keene saying she'd been shot in the head. Deputies did not find those injuries, and she's charged with false reporting. And Kentucky State Police are looking for a man who attacked and shot a local car dealership owner in Knott County. As James Combs was working on Tuesday, a man hit him with a gun and knocked him to the ground. While Combs was fighting with him, he was unable to tell who the man was because he had a ski mask on. After pushing the attacker off of him, he says the man shot at him and took off. Luckily, the bullet missed.
Once he hit me in the face with a pistol and knocked me to the ground, and he was beating on me with the pistol till I get rolled over where I get a hold of him and pulled him down to me so I could see what he looked like, but I couldn't. I seen his nose and his mustache.
If you have any information on this attempted robbery, you should call Kentucky State Police. And yesterday we learned a trial date is set for two people accused of beating a woman to death with a stick in Whitley County. Chris Lowe and Lori Maddie are both charged with murder and unlawful imprisonment in the death of Michelle Marlowe. Police say on July of 2017 they found Marlowe's body after a trail of blood led them to it. They said it had been dragged inside a home. Lowe and Maddie's trial begins November 19th. And agents with the Federal Bureau of Investigations arrested a Pike County man yesterday. This is Jimmy Lee Moore. A federal grand jury indicted him on drug charges. From September 2016 through May of 2017, he's accused of distributing pills including oxycodone and hydrocodone. If convicted, Lee faces up to 30 years in prison and a hefty fine. And a man is accused of driving recklessly and putting others in danger in Laurel County. Deputies say they got a complaint of a driver running vehicles off the road and nearly hitting a retaining wall. Deputies found the vehicle on the interstate and conducted a traffic stop. They say 62-year-old Robert Allen was under the influence. He's charged with DUI and other traffic violations. And a close call in Floyd County yesterday. Take a look at this. Rescue crews needed to use a pontoon to save the victim of a crash. Their car went over an embankment at Dewey Lake and ended up in the water. Luckily, state park officials were able to get them in time to save the driver. And the Perry County Sheriff's Department was called to a two-vehicle crash yesterday afternoon. It took place on Kentucky's 15 at the light at the turnoff to 451. One of the drivers was ejected from his vehicle during the crash, and both drivers were taken to the hospital with injuries. We do not know how serious the injuries are at this time, and witnesses have talked to the Sheriff's Department about how the incident happened.
One of the vehicles may have spun out and slid prior to impact, prior to the collision occurring, but it appears to be an unintended collision.
The road was closed for over an hour. It is now back open in both directions. And it has been almost 3 months since a pipeline explosion rocked a Lincoln County community. One person was killed, 6 were hospitalized, and 5 homes were destroyed. What was a crater and black ground have now been replaced with green grass and 3 orange posts marking where the pipeline is underground. You could say it's getting back to normal, but Donnie Turner says his neighborhood is turning into a ghost town.
I'm curious to see what's going to be left on some of these properties that they bought. Basically everything from the little knoll right here that you see back, they pretty well bought them out.
Turner says Enbridge has bought multiple homes on Indian Camp Road, and at least 7 families are not coming back. The pipeline explosion is still being investigated by the National Transportation Safety Board. It could be next summer before final cause is released. And just ahead on Mountain News this morning, astronauts on board the International Space Station will be receiving a delivery that is out of this world.
Some of you could wake up to some patchy frost on the cars this morning, so be ready for that. I'll track out your Friday and the weekend ahead in about 3 minutes.